Finally, my very first day at school had arrived, and I could hardly contain my excitement as I walked along the outdoor hallway. Before I get ahead of myself, let me introduce myself properly. I'm Hazel Palmer, and I'm 17 years old, and I'm a teacher. Yes, you heard it right. Not to brag or anything, but I am somewhat of a certified genius, which is how I graduated college so early. I was even offered a prestigious position in a university research project, but I rejected it to pursue my true dream of becoming a high school teacher. So here I was, not as a student, but as a real teacher, ready to fulfill my passion with a bright smile on my face. Since it was a special occasion, I wore my favorite green hoodie, which made me feel super cool. But then, completely out of nowhere, my path was blocked by a group of older boys throwing cheesy pickup lines at me. I rolled my eyes, thinking I had no time for this monkey business, and tried to brush past them. Unfortunately, they surrounded me and refused to let me go. I looked at them firmly, asking if they even knew who I was, intending to tell them that I was their new teacher. But before I could finish, one of them snatched the glasses right off my face. In an instant, everything went completely blurry. Panicking, I stumbled around blindly trying to grab them back, but someone shoved me roughly onto the hard floor, sending a sharp pain through my knee. Just then, a stern, deep voice cut through the noise. It was a boy named Ethan, and he fiercely ordered everyone to scram and give the glasses to him. The group scattered, and through my blurry vision, I saw the silhouette of my savior holding out a hand to help me up. He handed me my glasses, and as the world snapped back into focus, I profusely thanked him. But instead of saying anything, he just gave me a completely cold, distant look and walked off without a single word. I stared after him, thinking it was incredibly strange, but I had to shake it off. It was time to head to my very first class. Before heading to my classroom, I had to attend the morning staff meeting. I stood nervously beside the principal at the front of the room as he introduced me to the faculty. I had expected a warm, welcoming environment, but instead, my heart sank as I noticed the other teachers throwing me judging. They started whispering to each other, likely doubting my ability because of my age. Luckily, after the meeting ended, a young teacher named Rebecca approached me. She kindly welcomed me to the school and even gave me a helpful heads up about some of the notorious rebels I should watch out for. Leaving the meeting room, I stopped outside my assigned classroom, took a deep breath to gather my courage, and walked in. But the moment I finished introducing myself, the entire room erupted into chaos, sounding like a buzzing beehive. A boy with a mullet and a nose piercing loudly suggested that we should continue the lesson at the movie theater tonight, letting out a sharp whistle. I immediately realized this must be the troublemaker Lucas that Rebecca had warned me about. Before I could reply, a girl near the front scoffed loudly and told him that there was no way he would ever date someone who wore such a goofy hoodie. Another girl chimed in, laughing and asking who had allowed a cartoon-obsessed person to teach here. The whole class started booing and buzzing with mockery. I was completely stunned, having never expected such a harsh reaction. I tried to restore order by raising my hand and signaling for them to be quiet, but it was to no avail. Losing my patience, I finally snapped and angrily screamed at them to be quiet, threatening that I would give everyone a failing grade if they did not sit down. Thank goodness, the threat worked, and the room fell silent. I let out a quiet sigh of relief, thinking I had finally shown them who was in charge. But a new problem arose during the lesson. When I called a few students to the board, they just stood there, scratching their heads in confusion. I felt deeply disappointed and wondered if there was anyone in this room who was actually here to study. I turned to the crowd and asked who the top student in the class was. Instantly, the students started rambling, and everyone turned their heads toward the back row, shouting Ethan's name. I looked toward the back and was surprised to see the very same boy who had helped me in the hallway earlier. However, he just stared back at me blankly, looking as if he did not recognize me at all. Feeling nervous, I began to stutter, calling on him and asking if he could come up to solve the mathematical formula on the board. In my anxiety, I completely tripped over my words, mispronouncing the word equation multiple times before finally getting it right. Ethan let out a cocky smirk and remarked that he supposed spelling was a bit too hard for a math person like me. The entire class burst into a roar of laughter at my expense. Geez, this guy was unbelievable. I quickly tried to regain my composure, looking down at the class gradebook to hide my embarrassment. I cleared my throat and called out the name of the second best student, Cassie Santiago. The name sounded exactly like my best friend from middle school. I scanned the room and noticed an arm reluctantly rising from a far corner. The girl kept her head lowered, clearly not wanting me to see her face. My eyes went wide with excitement as I realized it really was her. It felt so wonderful to see a familiar face in this chaotic place, but as I watched her hide away, I could not help but wonder why she was trying so hard to avoid me. That afternoon, while walking across the school car parking lot, I noticed Cassie and her crowd picking on a younger girl. The moment they spotted me, the group scattered, but I managed to stop Cassie. I looked at her, deeply hurt, and asked since when she had become a mean girl. Cassie looked irritated, snapping that it was none of my business and that I could report her to the principal if I liked. Then she strutted away, leaving me standing there completely confused. I could not understand how the sweet girl I used to know had ended up on such a dark path. Later that evening at home, I talked things over with my mom. She sighed and revealed a heartbreaking truth. Cassie's father had recently passed away in an accident, leaving her with her stepmother. The heavy grief must have been too much to bear, and she had put up this cold, reckless facade as a defense mechanism. My heart ached for her. It was just so incredibly sad. The next morning, I walked into the classroom with a new plan. To help Cassie feel included and give the class an academic boost, I announced a new policy. More homework, and anyone who did not finish would get minus points. On top of that, every lesson would come with a gift quiz during recess. I was bursting with excitement, while the students groaned in frustration. I then asked Cassie and Ethan to help tutor their classmate. However, when I called Cassie to the board, she froze. Strangely, she could not even solve a simple equation. At first, I thought she was just being rebellious, but during the test that recess, I caught her blatantly copying Ethan's answers as he pushed his paper toward her. A sudden realization hit me. Were all her straight A's just from cheating? To make things even more shocking, I later found out that Ethan was actually her stepbrother. After class, I spotted Cassie standing alone in front of a vending machine. I walked up to her, adopting a serious tone, and told her I knew the secret behind her top grade. I gently but firmly explained that high scores meant nothing when they did not come from her own hard work. Cassie looked offended and angry. She let out a sharp snort, telling me to butt out of her business, and bitterly added that I was about as much her friend as I was a proper teacher. As she walked away, I called out from behind, offering to tutor her in the library right after school. Without even turning around, she coldly muttered that she couldn't care less. Her words definitely stung, but I figured she was just trying to maintain her tough image. I still went to the library and waited for her, but she never showed up. No matter how much I tried to reach out, Cassie completely ignored me and kept right on cheating. During the midterm exam, she didn't even try to be sneaky anymore. She just blatantly snatched Ethan's test paper right in front of me. It broke my heart because she was my old friend, but as a teacher, I couldn't let it slide. With a heavy heart, I walked over and dismissed her test right then and there. I let out a long sigh as Cassie and the rest of the students sat there, completely dumbfounded. Later that same day, I was in the library searching for materials when I overheard a student named Sadie talking to Rebecca nearby. Sadie looked highly irritated, complaining that I was way too much for disqualifying Cassie's test, and asked why I couldn't just be understanding like Rebecca. Rebecca kept her voice calm, telling Sadie to cut me some slack because I was just doing what I thought was best. I stood there in absolute shock. So that was what my students really thought of me. After everything I had done to help them, all I got was bad-mouthing. At the same time, I felt grateful to Rebecca for defending me. It was no wonder the kids liked her so much. A few days later, while I was sitting in the teacher's room marking papers, the unexpected happened. Cassie, Lucas, and a few others walked in and actually asked me for extra lessons. I was surprised, but happily nodded, thinking they were finally starting to care about studying. But little did I know, it was just a cruel ruse to turn my days into a nightmare, and I was pretty sure Lucas was the mastermind. One morning, I almost fainted from horror when I opened my bag and found a massive ant nest inside. A couple of days later, I went to stand up only to realize my pants were stuck to the chair with chewing gum. I felt incredibly depressed, but fortunately, Ethan always showed up at the exact right time to help me, quietly chasing away the ants and cleaning the gum. He was becoming such a riddle to me. Despite his usual cold expression, he now defended me in class and even silently helped me carry my heavy textbook. Even though Ethan had been helping me at school, I never expected him to care about me that much outside of class. One afternoon, while I was working my part-time job at the car wash, I was shocked to see him walking onto the lot. Embarrassed to be seen covered in soap, I quickly hid behind a car, but Ethan spotted me and walked straight into my wash bay. He gently told me that he was there to see me and there was no need to hide, then took the water sprayer from my hands and started washing the vehicle for me. After my shift, Ethan walked me home. The atmosphere was so relaxed that I found myself opening up to him about my mom's failing health and how I took this exhausting job just to cover her hospital fee. Ethan listened gently and softly patted my shoulder to comfort me. This side of him was far different from his usual cold persona, and it felt truly heartwarming. Our walk was cut short when we noticed an elderly lady who seemed completely lost, so we offered to guide her home. And guess what? When we arrived at her house, the door opened and there stood Lucas. The notorious rebel looked absolutely shocked to see me. His tough guy act instantly vanished as he gently took his grandma's hands and helped her sit on the couch. As we sat and talked, I was surprised to see how much Lucas cared for his Nana. She was the only family he had left. I turned to him and softly said that I knew studying wasn't his thing, but asked if he had ever thought about how happy his grandma would be if he at least tried. Lucas silently looked down at the floor, while Ethan looked at me with genuine admiration. From that day on, a miracle happened. Lucas completely stopped causing me any mischief, and the other students followed his lead. They actually started paying attention, and soon they could even solve simple math problems by themselves. It was just baby steps, but it made me giggle with relief. Seeing my hard work finally bear fruit, I proudly set up a parent meeting to report on the students' progress. But halfway through my presentation, a giant photo of me cosplaying as Sailor Moon suddenly popped up on the screen. My heart dropped. Before I could explain, Cassie's stepmother stood up and angrily shouted how the school could dare let such a childish person teach her children. She stormed out, and everyone else followed. As the crowd cleared, I saw Cassie standing there, smirking cruelly. I felt utterly depressed. I thought I finally had my students on my side, but it turned out I never did. After that awful parent meeting, I sat alone in the quiet classroom, feeling completely crushed. Then came the absolute last straw. My phone buzzed with a message showing my mom's latest medical result. Reading the words, I completely broke down, burying my face in my hands as all my bottled up stress and sadness poured out in heavy tears. Suddenly, a warm hand rested gently on my shoulder. I looked up and turned around to see Ethan standing behind me. He leaned in closer, his usual cold gaze replaced with genuine worry, and softly asked what was wrong. Wiping my tears, I choked out that my mom's health had turned for the worse and she needed an urgent operation. Ethan looked at me sympathetically, telling me how sorry he was, and reassured me that everything was going to be okay, and that I needed to stay strong. I truly appreciated his comfort. Once I calmed down, we gathered our things to leave, but the classroom door wouldn't budge. It was firmly locked from the outside. It was another cruel prank from my student. We tried banging on the wood and screaming for help, but the school was deserted. Eventually, we gave up and sat on the floor, waiting for more. The quiet atmosphere had a strange way of making people open up, and for the first time, I got to know the real Ethan. Sitting against the wall, he quietly remarked that it seemed like both of us had problems with the families we loved. I stopped sobbing and asked what his story was. He hesitated before confessing that he had a sister whom he knew I already ran into, that he really adored. But no matter how hard he tried, she always built a wall between them. I was amazed. This was the first time Ethan had ever talked about his personal life. He always wore that cold mask, but deep down he had his own struggles too. I became so absorbed in his story that I completely forgot we were trapped. Slowly, exhaustion caught up to me, and I gradually fell asleep right there against the wall. The next morning, the chatter of students entering the room startled me awake. As I opened my eyes, I realized with horror that my head was resting on Ethan's shoulder. Worse yet, countless phone cameras were pointing straight at us. A girl in the front row smirked, loudly telling everyone to check their phones to see what Ethan and I had been doing all night. Oh my God, I pulled away instantly, my heart hammering as I looked at my phone. Photos of us sleeping had been uploaded to the school website, and from the tight angle, it looked exactly like we were kissing. I tried to explain that we had been locked in, but the students just threw me disgusted look. I turned to Ethan, but he just stood there completely dumbfounded and silent. Before I could say more, a text from the principal popped up, coldly informing me that there would be an immediate hearing regarding an inappropriate relationship with a student. How was this even possible? With a heavy heart, I dragged my feet toward the principal's office. As I passed the schoolyard, the sound of familiar voices shouting caught my attention. I quickly leaned against the wall to eavesdrop. It was Ethan and Cassie. Ethan sounded furious, demanding to know why she had done this. Cassie replied with an arrogant sneer, snapping that she had told him to find my weakness. But he had come up with nothing. Ethan shot back that he had done everything he possibly could, but Cassie let out a harsh laugh. She asked why I was still around then, explaining that as long as I was teaching, I would keep messing up their cheating system, which meant her stepmother would chew her head off for being useless. I covered my mouth in pure shock. Everything finally connected: the ant nest, being locked in the room, and this morning's photo. Cassie had been pulling the strings this entire time, and Ethan was just her puppet, pretending to befriend me just to please his sister. I knew Cassie resented me, but finding out Ethan could be that heartless completely broke my spirit. Suddenly, Cassie turned and her eyes locked onto mine. We both froze in shock for a split second before I turned on my heel and ran away as fast as I could. I was still trying to process the painful betrayal when I walked in to see the school council glaring at me. The principal looked furious and stern, telling me I was an insult to the teaching profession and that they had no choice but to fire me. Everyone nodded in agreement. I was ready for the worst when suddenly Ethan rushed in. He shouted for them to stop, confessing that he had deliberately jammed the lock to get back at me for being too strict, but accidentally got stuck too. He firmly stated there was nothing going on between us. Everyone looked at him in shock. Thanks to his confession, I was cleared of all charges, while Ethan ended up with a week-long suspension. I wondered why he would protect me after everything. After such a long and exhausting trial, I drove around town to blow off some steam. Passing a clothes shop, I saw Cassie having a loud fight with a security guard. I pulled over and found out she had stolen a bracelet and was refusing to call her parent. The guard threatened to call the cops, so I immediately stepped forward as her teacher to bail her out. Cassie looked completely surprised, asking why I would help her. I didn't bother explaining myself and just left. Since that day, Cassie stopped attending the extra classes. After his suspension, Ethan returned to school with his usual distant, offhand attitude, barely acknowledging me as I walked past. I sighed, realizing I had no time to worry about those two. My mission now was to prepare my students for the upcoming finals and regain my prestige. Luckily, the rest of the class started taking studying seriously. One day, Lucas and a few others even crowded around my desk, eagerly asking me to help them solve some advanced math exercises. 2 weeks later, when the final results came out, my excited students rushed over to me in the hallway. One girl happily thanked me, saying that thanks to me, the exam questions were exactly the same as the ones I had shown them the other day, so it only took a blink to finish. I froze in confusion. What were they talking about? Before I could understand, the principal's voice suddenly crackled over the loudspeaker, summoning me to his office immediately. As I entered the principal's office, he angrily slammed down the math sheet I had taught in the extra class, furiously accusing me of leaking the final exam question. I pleaded that I was innocent, but he refused to listen and fired me on the spot. Desperate to find the truth, I rushed to the classroom and asked the students where they got that paper. They told me it was already on the table when they arrived. I felt crushed, assuming Cassie and Ethan had framed me, using his past remorse as a trap. I buried my face in my hands and wept. They had won. Unemployed and buried under my mom's hospital bills, my life became a nightmare. I worked full-time at the car wash by day and took night shifts at 7-Eleven. Beyond the measly wages, I had to endure my former students throwing rotten eggs and tomatoes at me at the car wash, alongside scornful comments that I didn't deserve to be a teacher. One evening at the hospital, Ethan suddenly rushed into my mom's room, grabbed my arm, and claimed he was going to clear my name. I yanked my arm away, furious and confused since I believed he was the one who ruined me. What game was he playing now? Still, with nothing left to lose, I reluctantly followed. He led me to the school's control room, where the principal was already waiting. On the monitor screen, we watched a live feed of Sadie standing nervously on the school stage. Ethan explained that Sadie was the one who had placed the math sheet on the table. My jaw dropped further when Rebecca walked onto the stage to join her. Sadie anxiously told Rebecca that she had distributed the test as planned but was terrified of getting caught. Rebecca calmly reassured her, saying that with Palmer fired, no one would dig it up, and she could finally reclaim her position as the student's beloved teacher. When Sadie panicked and threatened to confess everything to the principal, Rebecca smirked arrogantly, asking who would ever believe her. Before Rebecca could say another word, the principal flipped on the control room microphone, his stern voice booming through the auditorium speakers. I would. Rebecca froze in pure terror on the screen. Furious after weeks of humiliation, I didn't waste another second. I bolted out of the control room and rushed straight to the stage to confront Rebecca, asking her how she could betray me when I thought she was my friend. With a cocky attitude, she crossed her arms and told me to ask my phony self, claiming I only wanted the students to like me. I stood there shocked by her cruel jealousy, but before I could speak, Ethan stepped forward. He fiercely defended me, saying I had earned the students' respect with a pure heart, while Rebecca's love just came from buttering them up with lies, which ruined their attitude towards study. The principal, shaking with rage, stormed onto the stage, scolded Rebecca for her lack of ethics, and fired her on the spot. Though the principal apologized and offered my job back, the humiliation had completely drained me, so I refused and ran crying into the schoolyard. Ethan quickly caught up, gently grabbing my arms to apologize remorsefully, admitting he only tried to please Cassie but now realized he was hurting me. I nonchalantly told him I already knew. As I turned to leave, a group of students led by Cassie approached. To my surprise, Ethan whispered that Cassie had actually helped him bait Rebecca into confessing. Cassie held my hands, tearfully apologizing for her behavior and begging me to stay, while Lucas added that they had learned so much from me. Touched by their sincerity, I cried and nodded my agreement to stay. It had been a crazy term, but I was glad I didn't give up on my dream job. I later spoke with Cassie's stepmom, who hadn't realized her strict approach was causing a family rift. After an honest conversation, Cassie, Ethan, and their mom understood each other much better, and we all became close friends. A few months later, graduation day arrived. Watching my students, or rather my friends, prepare to pursue their dreams made me incredibly proud. During the ceremony, Ethan suddenly dragged me to a quiet corner, his eyes bright. He asked if we were finally no longer teacher and student, and when I confusedly agreed, he smiled and asked if I could still teach him one more thing: how to love me.